Call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Appropriation 2013-14 Estimates Bill. Adjourned debate on second reading and amendment proposed thereto.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, here we are discussing and debating the 5th budget of the National-led government, and I have to say that every single day in this House the difference becomes clearer and clearer. Now, I could be talking about the polls, of course, which is also becoming clearer and clearer about what New Zealanders want, but I'm not. I could be talking about the difference between the factions in the Labour Party, because every day that becomes clearer and clearer, but I'm not. What I am talking about, Mr Speaker, is the very clear difference that the New Zealand public can now see between what this government is continuing to deliver, has delivered for the last 5 years, and what Budget 13 is a continuation of, the solid, sensible, caring, progressive management of this government that has got New Zealand on the right path, and, Mr Speaker, what the Labour Greens coalition would condemn this country to. That is what is becoming clearer and clearer in the minds of New Zealand, and I welcome it, actually. I welcome Labour tethering themselves, hitching their cart to the green horse, because that is showing New Zealand very clearly the real risks that they face if they were to put that lot in charge of this country. Mr Speaker, Bill English in this budget has New Zealand on track. He has us on track to get back to surplus. He has this year, sir, in this budget, shown us this year we're looking at a deficit of around $2 billion, when Australia, that mighty, powerful nation across the ditch that has always held up to us as the beacon of all things good, Australia has announced under their Labour government a $20 billion deficit. We are on track to a $2 billion deficit this year and a return to surplus as promised in 2014-15. Mr Speaker, Bill English is delivering us steady growth, in fact growth rates that are the envy of most of the rest of the world and are really only bettered by Australia. Sir, he has delivered us continually reducing debt projections, remembering we inherited from the Labour Party never-ending deficits. We were facing a country that would never, ever, ever get back to surplus.
Order!
Never get back to surplus.
Order! Speaker will not allow a speaker on the feet to be drowned out. This is Parliament. It's not a public house. Call the honourable member.
Oh, thank you, Mr Robertson. I enjoy their bleating. It just shows how much the truth hurts them. Mr Speaker, Bill English has us on a track to get back to surplus. That is a remarkable feat. We see falling unemployment, we see record low interest rates, and we see the lowest rates of crime in 30 years. That is what sensible management, that is what a caring, progressive government that is focused on what matters and that does want a brighter future for all New Zealanders means. And what is the difference between the alternative and the options New Zealand face? What would a Labour Green regime deliver to this country? Well, what we do know, sir, is that they continue every day to show us without doubt, without question, that they would take more money out of the pocket of New Zealanders to spend on inflated bureaucracy, working groups, more red tape, more spending and more debt, because it's all they know, it's all they deliver, it's their only way of functioning. It seems to me, sir, that they are genetically hardwired to focus on what they can take and what they can spend. Every utterance that we hear from Labour and the Greens is how much can we take, how much can we spend? Not one word, not one policy, not one contribution, not one press release, not one speech about how they're going to contribute to getting the New Zealand productive sector up and running, providing the jobs, providing the incomes, providing the opportunities for New Zealanders. You see, David Cunliffe still doesn't get it. David Cunliffe still thinks government spending is the fix to all our woes. If the government can tax you more and spend more on bureaucracy, everything will be well. Because the Labour Party still think there's a magic money machine, magic beans that they can spend, and they can just keep on spending, keep on taxing, keep on borrowing. That won't matter. Never mind, Mr Speaker, that under a Labour Green government, under the settings that they left us, the ruination that they gave to this economy, right now we would be looking at $100 billion more debt. $100 billion more debt. That is the future they want for young New Zealanders. That is the future that they want to condemn every young New Zealander to. $100 billion debt burden around their necks. We won't do that, Mr. Speaker. We will manage this economy sensibly. We have for 5 years. We will continue to. And that's why you have people like the IMF coming out and saying New Zealand has got it right. New Zealand has got economic and political settings that are right and that other countries should be looking to. Mr. Speaker, that is a significant milestone. That is why our interest rates are low. If you want to talk about making living affordable for New Zealanders, the best thing we can do, Mr. Speaker, I apologise for bringing you into the debate, the best thing that this country can do is ensure that we have sensible policies, low debt, low interest rates, and we have the settings right that businesses can create jobs, that they are incentivised to invest. And that's one of the core reasons, Mr. Speaker, that we are in this party and in this government focused on reforming the Resource Management Act to ensure that while it protects our environment, it also provides the certainty and the streamlined processes that mean that we can have housing that we can afford. We can create jobs in our cities and in our towns, and we can do it in a way that isn't simply a festive billing for the consultants, the lawyers, the planners that have built up around the industry that this has become. We've got to have good outcomes. But, Mr. Speaker, we know that in the last 2 years alone, these over-bloated, cumbersome, litigious processes have meant that at least $800 million worth of projects haven't gone ahead in the last 2 years. That's jobs. So every time one of the opposition come into this House and say, where are the jobs? I say to them, how about you support fixing some of the roadblocks to creating those jobs? How about you get on board with the government and say, we can do better. We can have settings that look after our environment and still provide certainty, still provide opportunities to invest. But no, they want to oppose it. And in fact, the Labour Party has already come out and said that they, if elected, would repeal all the improvements to the RMA, which is interesting, really, because they are saying they would rather keep the inefficient, bloated, expensive, litigious system that we have than support any sensible change. Do you know what else that would mean, Mr. Speaker? It would mean that the Labour Party have announced that they are opposing us including the protection of New Zealand from natural hazards in the RMA, because that's one of the changes we want to make to Part 2, and yet we've already got the Labour Party coming out and saying they oppose that, and if they were elected, they'd reverse it. So here we are, the Labour Party, who are sitting there telling New Zealand that they don't want the protection of New Zealand from the risks of natural hazards in the RMA. Well, I think that's appalling, I think it's disgraceful, and I think it shows how they are willing to play politics, do and say whatever they can to get back in power where they can continue to borrow, spend and ruin the future of this country. They are shameless, Mr. Speaker. They are not looking out for the best interests of this country. If they were, they would be looking to support sensible, meaningful improvements. Mr. Speaker, this morning I've been up in Kapiti announcing the beginning of the build of ultra-fast broadband in Kapiti, in Levin, in Gisborne, in Upper Hutt, because we are interested in supporting rural and provincial New Zealand. We know that we can make significant gains by ensuring that rural and provincial New Zealand is connected and can do business from anywhere in this country, that our children in the smallest town, the smallest rural community can access the best resources not only in New Zealand but in the world, that our patients can get access to health care from wherever they are through high-speed video hookups and telehealth initiatives, that our businesses can conduct business around the world, that they can recruit staff, work from home, sell into markets anywhere in the world. Mr. Speaker, this is transformational, and it's transformational infrastructure that this government is backing and that Labour voted against because they don't support rural New Zealand, they don't support families in small-town New Zealand getting ahead, and the national government, Mr. Speaker, does. But it doesn't stop there. We're rolling out ultra-fast broadband. We're supporting better water infrastructure. We're supporting better roading networks to ensure our goods can get to market. We've put in place, Mr. Speaker, for the first time an EEZ protection regime. 9 years under Labour and the Greens, did they care about putting rules in place to protect the EEZ? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The national-led government is the one that introduced rules to protect the EZ. The National-led government is the one that introduced a national policy statement on fresh water. The National-led government is the one that introduced the Waste Minimisation Act and is reducing waste into our landfills. This is a government of action. That is a government of ruination.
I call the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 points